Hello and welcome Rajmund Fekete to this Political Bark episode. So happy to have you here in Norway with me. And first of all, you are the director of the Institute of the Research of Communism, coming straight from Budapest, Hungary. How are you doing here today in Oslo?
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the chance to being here with you in the beautiful building of our embassy. Hungarian embassy. For a Central European, the climate is not so friendly, but it's still comfortable. The weather right now is like a windy autumn day in Hungary.
Exactly. I think the weather outside represents a bit of the political situation going on in several European countries and also in Norway right now. Me being part of the Labour Party, but also highly engaged in politics here in Norway, I'm especially concerned about everything that's going on. Obviously, you don't know so much about it coming from the outside, but I think that's an interesting perspective for us to receive on your first impressions on Norway and the little you have seen here so far.
Yeah, as you mentioned perfectly that I'm not an expert on Norwegian politics, Norwegian domestic politics. I'm not familiar with it, but what I'm seeing that the people generally and experts and what I have a chance to meet a lot of experts during these days. Sometimes they are very open-minded, very clear-minded, with good questions, good intentions, good narratives and thinking. And of course, sometimes we see that kind of old elitist style, which is a colonial style, a so-called colonial style, which is about that we will tell you how to play democracy, how to play rule of law, and these kind of things. But you know, I'm coming from a country with 10 million people who are always, and most in the past 16 years, is always against the flow, and we loves it, and we doesn't care about these kind of critics.
Of course, the criticism against Hungary in Norway has been going on for, I would say, a good 20 years. In many ways, as I've seen it, it's been a consolidated approach from many Western countries, and also during the former Biden time, that was a sort of global decision on Hungary, how many Western countries at least were supposed to deal and think about Hungary. That has also led the narrative here in Norway. But I do think we see things are changing now with the new Trump government, as he has a very close relationship with the Hungarian government. And I think we live in a very interesting time now because there's sort of an ideological change also happening from this, you mentioned, global elitistic way of doing politics to a more bottom-up, led by nations, led by the needs of the countries, and also a more traditional way of seeing our lives. Hungary is known for being a more traditional society. And do you see those values changing in Europe as a whole?
Yeah, it's what you just asked me. It's a very complicated and complex issue, but it shows and represented that we are living in a complex world and with a lot of conflicts right now. If we stay just at the Hungarian way of thinking, that back in 2010, when the second Orbán government had a chance to start his governance with a two-third majority, at that time we had a communist constitution, which was established in 1947. So after the end of the Second World War, and when the communist rule started in Hungary. So one of the main reason was to create a new constitution is because of that we have to have a 21st century constitution, for example, and the total mindset of the Hungarian Prime Minister was that that kind of liberal democracy, the unipolar moment of the United States of America is over.
Okay.
If you go back to the time in 2007, 2008, the economic crisis, it was not just a failure in the matrix. It showed that the whole system is not going to go so long. And after that, we saw in Europe the whole migration crisis in 2015, if you remember that time, and we lived on, unfortunately, we lived under the COVID situation, which showed that European Union cannot handle these kind of situations. And of course, the war in our neighboring country in Ukraine showed that the whole world is changing. We can say that there's some terms which says that this is a regime change, a world order change. But right now, where we are living right now is a disorder. A world disorder,
All right.
where we are living right now, and what the Prime Minister saw that we have to do something differently,
Yeah.
focusing on families, focusing our traditions,
On the nation states,
on
as
the nation
a
state,
global as an entity before
as an
the
entity,
rest.
because the Prime Minister thinks that if we have strong nation states, then Europe would be stronger too, with stronger member states. And of course, that's a big debate, not just on the political level, but above it, because it's a battle of mindsets. That we
But-
would like to live in nation states, or we would like to live in some kind of imperialistic way.
Yes, and I think what, at least in Norway, what people have seen now, especially with the leak of the Epstein files, is that there is such a thing called the global elite, and there is such a elite club that our main politicians in Norway, Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and now Minister of Finance, former head of NATO, are part of still. And this is something that belongs to this global world order that many people are reacting to these days, because if the focus is so much on this global order, then the focus on the national needs and interests of the people are lacking. And this is what we're seeing, especially here in Norway. And I think in contrast with Hungary, where they have managed to look at the nation's interest and the people's interest and are slowly also working to make it better, we have not reached that point here in Norway. So since you are an expert in ideological systems, for example, communism, socialism, and then Nazism, also looking at the Hungarian uprising in '56. What do you think makes a people happy in an ideological political system, and how is that reflected when uprisings are happening or massive movements are happening? We are going to see some of them in Norway soon. And which factors drive people?
Yeah, again, very complex and interesting questions. First, about the Epstein case, which is, if we go that way, I don't know what will be the consequences, for example, in Norway. But if we see the whole Epstein case globally, it shows the immorality of this global elite. Because after the death of Epstein, they thought that this whole case will close. He's dead, he's not here anymore. But the people, the ordinary people, has still a lot of questions. How he became a powerful rich man from the nowhere. When he died, $16 million on his bank account, 2 private islands, jets, ships, houses, places, etc., etc., and it shows the immorality of this elite, and that they are in an elite circle, in an elite club. And the question is still here with us: that how this money came from, why they did this, that, and what they did really in these islands, of course, with that pedophilia, etc., etc. But we see that during these days, when they were there, of course, they did this kind of horrible things, which is not acceptable. It's not acceptable in any way. But in the meantime, they made trade issues, global political issues, weapon trading, etc. So the business was there too, and it showed that this elite from all over the world were there. In the Norwegians, from the United States, from former presidents to a lot of people in Slovakia, etc., etc. And it shows the immorality of this elite, that they thought that they can do anything and they are above the law. And these issues and these cases kill the society and started to erode it. Like, for example, in the UK, the grooming case, when Palestinian bands kidnapped from lower class kids, girls, mostly girls, sold them to sex slave, to prostitute, etc., etc. And if the parents, if the kids herself tried to go against it, they were threatened, paid, or even killed. And the authorities in the UK knew about these cases. Politicians know about these cases, but they didn't do anything because the fear of fear of being racist. That was the first one. The second one, that they paid off, and the third, that they didn't even care about it. But when these cases came up, maybe last year in the UK, and put everything out in the table, it eroded the whole society.
And the trust.
And the trust in these elites, and that's what we are seeing today. That this elite is not in crisis, is dying right now.
Exactly.
Is dying right now. And back to your question about the revolution of Hungary in 1956, there was a big difference. We were an occupied country, occupied by a foreign rule, the Soviet Union, and they made brutal terror against the people. If you look back from 1945 to the 1960s, around 700 people executed by political reasons. 700,000 people sent to the gulags, the labor camps, into Siberia, in the Soviet Union, and 300,000 people never came back. And if they came back, they have never had a chance to talk about it, because it was against the will of the ruling party. So Hungarian people lived in a dictatorship, a totalitarian dictatorship, where the terror was the main goal for the system. And that's the Hungarian mindset is really different. It sometimes seems complicated, complex, but it's really simple in that way, that we don't like to be ruled. We are the nation of the freedom fighters. We love freedom. We love independence. We love these words, and we always had to fight for it with our life. In 1848 too, in 1956. And even if we die, and we know that we will die for our freedom, we will do it. Because that's the Hungarian mindset. And the reason why 1956 came out is one of the main reasons was that the terror was so unacceptable for the people, that they were said that we have enough. We have had enough from it, and we want to live free, independent, without Soviet tanks, without Soviet advisor, and without communist rule.
But obviously Hungary is one country and one of the, I think, major countries that stood up against Soviet rule in that time. But the whole of Eastern Europe, and I would say Balkan also, they have a different mentality than Western Europe. So obviously in Norway, everyone is very shocked that the government has been implicated in partly Epstein, other organizations also. They're very shocked because they have been asleep in many ways. And this is because, of course, the historical knowledge and memory in Hungary is much more fresh and alive and part of the culture than in Norway. So here, everyone is more angry and vengeful right now when they could, of course, have been so 10 years ago, you know.
Yeah. You know, for 30 years of communism in Hungary, it created for us that kind of mindset that we are know to read between the lines.
Exactly.
So when the whole issue of which came from the West, that kind of the Me Too, cancel culture, Vogue, and those issues, they try to push on us. We said that, stop for a moment. What is it? What is it? What is
Right.
it? What is it about? And we said that, come on, guys, that we were lived under 40 years. We know how could go on, and we don't want it. We lived under that kind of issue once, and we don't want it.
This type of
This
social
type of
cohesion.
Yes. Because we know that these kind of experiments
Yes.
where will follow and where will lead.
Oh.
So that's that because of this 40 years of communism and foreign rule and as an occupied country, we knew how to survive and how to read between the lines. And every time when we see something like that, the red button is always, and the red flag is always in our mind that, wait.
But do you think that's one of the reasons also why Hungary has received so much bad press and has been such a, such an impossible character to deal with during the Biden governments and also from Brussels' side? Is it because the Hungary just said, no, we don't accept whatever you send our way. We are not going to take it as
and we could be a precedent.
And yeah.
Because Hungary is a 10 million people lives in a European way, is a middle-sized country. In worldwide, we are a small country, but the political strength of the Hungarian Prime Minister and his vision and strategic thinking could be a precedent for another countries. What we see today,
of course,
in the US, what we see today, in France with some parties, what we see in Germany, in Austria, or in Italy, and it could be a precedent that we can do, and we can
influence.
Organize our life, our country's life, in a different way, not that way what they want to push on us.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be blunt, but I think President Trump in many ways also has inspired himself by Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary.
And I know that I just saw a survey that the Nordic countries. Some kind of schizophrenic relation with the United States of America, but because in one way they don't like Mr. Trump's politics and they against it, but in the other hand they want to have a good and strong relations with the United States.
There are cuts in between
of America. So we see that there's some kind of paradox in that case. But from a Hungarian perspective, the Democratic Party, you mentioned President Biden's administration, they pushed their own agenda on us, and they tried everything. When the U.S. ambassador in Hungary made an interview to the Financial Times and says that we have our own tools and equipments to push the Hungarian government, that even Mr. Orban himself, I can say that that's not an allied partner's
of course not.
View and comments, because they put that kind of I'm not saying liberal, far leftist ideology on us. But as I mentioned to you, if in Hungary, if somebody from the outside tried to tell you what to do, we will stop and say no, we don't want this.
I think the interesting thing is in Norway, because of the culture and because of people are very looking for peaceful solutions to everything, and they're not very reactive. Maybe at home they are. I think a lot of these this thinking that came with for example, the Biden government, and that was influenced all over the world, and especially in the Western world. It was accepted fully by the politicians and then also taken in by the people as normal. But then at the same time, it didn't really stick, because as it's sort of one-shot politics, it's not something based in reality, then, it becomes like a pop-up show and it passes, and then something else, It doesn't really influence. So I think we're going to see a transition back to a Norway, perhaps a more traditional Norway also, the next years, especially now that the government is being very much challenged after the Epstein files, and investigations are ongoing, and people are not happy also. I think soon the majority of Norwegians are going to be very nervous about the future unless things are changing. I want to ask you, because now the elections in Hungary are coming up in April, what are your predictions? It's very hard to say something about who is going to win, which direction.
Yeah, in Hungary, we can say that this election could be or will be a strategic election, because after the election, the Hungarian people decide where they want to go in a war, or to go and stay in a peaceful way.
So
because in Hungary, what we see that the Prime Minister, Mr. Viktor Orbán, from the beginning of the war in Ukraine, say that we have to have peace as soon as possible. The Russians and the Ukrainians have to sit back to the table to discuss. If we goes deeper and deeper into the war, it could be go globally, and we saw it back in the just looking back for the First World War, started as a regional war, but after that it became a world war, and it was a war between brothers.
Yes, indeed.
It was a war it was a European Brotherhood war, which became the First World War. And from the beginning, the Hungarian Prime Minister tried everything to sit back to the table, try to have some peace deals, because it's not good for Europe, not good for Hungary, not good for Ukraine, and not good for the whole world. And we see that we are living in turbulent times.
But do you believe...
Right now. And sorry for that. And if the TISA party wins, they will go hardcore and 100% in that way of war to support Ukraine with weapons, with money,
but
everything
strategically, that's going to be very difficult for Hungary's relationship with the US, because President Trump is not going to support a war between Hungary and Russia. Hungary is going to lose its relationship with the...
State Secretary Mr. Marco Rubio was in Hungary a couple of weeks ago, and he says that the trade deals and everything, what they managed back in November between the Prime Minister and the President of US, says that it lives until the Prime Minister in Hungary called Mr. Viktor Orbán. And after that, if happens something, they will see it. That those kind of trade deals, those kind of shields, market shields,
will be gone. And then back to my final question, back to global geopolitics. How do you see the world evolved in the next decade? Actually, it's a huge question, very difficult to understand. But just in your creative thinking, how do you see it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not a future teller and magician, but as I mentioned at the beginning of our interview and our discussion, that we are in the world change of world order, and the moment we are a world disorder where everything changes. The whole Yalta system is gone. It's totally gone. The US and Mr. Trump's foreign policy is about that we would like to defend the Western Hemisphere. So it's like a 2.0 Monroe Doctrine, that America is for the Americans. And that's one of the reasons why they did earlier this year this whole Venezuela situation. Of course, it is about raw material. Of course, it is about energy, so oil. But it was a clear message to China, who's invested itself into Latin America within 20 years, and it was a clear message to them that Latin America belongs to the US, because for the US, Latin America is always the backyard of the United States of America. So that's the one I wanted to tell you. The second is that with this, that the whole IATA system is gone, there will be something new. The unipolar moment is over, and Mr. Trump knows it, and that's the reason why he tried to do everything to show power. For example, with the tariffs. It's
Yes.
like it's some kind of course, it's a strategy from them that I put the stakes on high, see the reactions, and after that I'm seeing where we can make the deal. But that's on the other hand, it's a massive communication of power that I have the power to negotiate with the partners in that way, in that matter of respect. But in the end, for example, the Chinese realized that they don't have the power, because when Mr. Trump first put that, I give you 125% on tariffs, and the Chinese says, okay, then we do the same too. And I think we have to see what will going on in the 30th of March, when there will be a meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. It could be really interesting, and we see that there's an opposite of the Kissinger politics, because if we look back last year in May, the Chinese president went to Vladimir Putin on the Victory Day memorial, which was a clear message to the West that we are together right now. And from the US perspective, is a big loss, because back in the Cold War era, the United States of America's first thing to did in the 1960s, 70s to cut off from each other the US, the Soviet Union, and the Chinese, and it was a great thing, and that was one of the key points where in the end they won the Cold War.
I mean, it seems that cooperation is the only way onwards.
Yes.
Global cooperation,
Yes, global
and the acceptance of.
And in that matter of respect, we didn't talk about not just China. We talked about, of course, a little bit about China, the US. We didn't talk anything about the BRICS.
Yes.
For example, India, those countries which are coming up to the level of big guys.
Definitely.
So we see that there won't be like a Cold War era, the two superpowers there. There won't be any kind of just one superpower like after the fall of communism. So with the US, the unipolar moment, there will be several players on the ground, and I think that could be that we have to cooperate between each other. So
Definitely.
we don't have to block from each other.
I think also this generation growing up now, they are not looking for war and conflict. They are actually really looking for normal, peaceful lives. So that's it's something good about the young generation today. I don't know, Generation X or Y or whatever they're called, but they are much more pacifist, which is perhaps a good thing than in the world order we're in. But thank you so much, and we're both looking forward to see the changes coming.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.